Oh, here we are. A few weeks ago, I mentioned that we're putting together sort of an updated version of a video we did many years ago on dating Chinese porcelain using Footrims and how to look at them. And so much has changed in the last 6 or 7 years since we did that. I thought it was high time we did another one because the copyists, the forgers in China are getting better and better and better in Jingdezhen because they're learning what to put in and what not to put in and so forth. So I thought it would be a good idea to update it. But there's a huge amount of material here. So I'm going to break this part on Qing porcelain up, and then we'll do one on Ming wares. We're going to break this up into sections. And the first one are going to be the Footrims of contemporary pieces. Now, some of you are going to say, "Well, I don't want to look at that because I can tell." No, you can't. If you've not been collecting for a very long time, you're going to have a hard time differentiating between old Footrims and new Footrims when they're done by professional forgers. Now, it's important to understand that the pieces we're going to focus on the most heavily are pieces that are done intentionally as forgeries. These are not contemporary innocent pieces that people just like and they're making replicas and they're not meant to deceive you. These are meant to fool you. And they seem to focus in on, very often, of course, on the most expensive pieces. And it's important to think about it this way. And I've said it before. If you're looking at an auction in a rural area of America, not one of the major auction houses, not one of the five or six big auction houses, and you see an auction house with a continuous, endless stream of unbelievably rare things with very low estimates, you should instantly know that everything they're selling is a fake, pretty much. Some people like to think that they've discovered an auction house that has the mother lode of Qinlong porcelains or Yongchen porcelains or Famille Rose or whatever it is, and they just keep coming up with more and more and more of it, and that nobody knows about it. No. I'm pretty familiar with every auction house on Live Auction News and Valuable at this point. And as you know, we have a report card on them, so we do know about them. That's not what happens, and it doesn't happen any more than a great things turning up in rural auctions, any more than you are likely to find an auction of French Impressionist paintings by famous artists turning up in a small podunk auction, and collection after collection after collection going through there. Every auction they've got Picassos and Monets and Manets and Caravaggios and No. You would know instantly that this is not true. You would know instantly that it's fraud. Unfortunately, in the United States, there is virtually no enforcement of fraudulent advertising in the auction industry. That's the dirty little secret that nobody wants to talk about. And every time you bid on something online, you agree to terms. And one of the terms you agree to is that you will not hold the auction house responsible for any misrepresentation or misstatement made. And that is something you check off. If you don't read that agreement, you don't know about it, but it's in there. And if you go to get your money back, you won't be able to. And the credit company will be handed that agreement that you signed, and that's the end of it. You're out the money. And I've dealt with people who are out $50 and $100 and $200,000 over the years that have bought things from some of these auction houses and are now in China trying to get rid of them, and they can't. All right, and unfortunately, a lot of the buyers of these fakes are Chinese nationals because they mistakenly believe that it's being offered. If it's being offered in a sale in the United States, it must be authentic because in America they wouldn't allow it. No, nonsense. They absolutely allow it, and they allow it in every state in the union. And nobody hardly ever goes after auction fraud in the U.S. unless it's by a copyrighted artist, a painter who has a copyright and so forth. Then they could put a claim in, and even then it's very difficult. But I'm going to focus on 4 categories of Chinese porcelain, and we're going to start first with contemporary Chinese ceramics. These are the modern Chinese ceramics. These are the totally modern pieces. They don't look like old porcelain. They're clearly not being made to deceive anyone. They're extremely creative. They're beautiful things. If you've never seen them, take the time to examine and take a look at some of the great contemporary ceramic art that's being made in Jingdezhen. There's some very, very good artists there, and they will in the future be well worth collecting. I only recommend buying things that you love. Don't buy them as an investment, but buy them as buy contemporary art the way you buy antique art because you just like it. All right, but those are not the subject here, nor are factory pieces. There are a lot of porcelain factories in China that make ceramics for department stores, for big retail store chains, Pier 1, that kind of thing. They make dinner services, tureens, vases, urns, those enormous, sometimes you see them around, those 7-foot tall, very skinny vases. Those are all reproductions. And they're all sold through decorative department stores. Interior designers like to throw them into houses because they have a sort of a great look to them and so forth. And they're not going to fool anybody. All right, no one's going to mistake them even slightly for being possibly an antique. And then you have the Chinese decorative objects that are produced, and these are made sort of a medium quality by contemporary Chinese ceramic artists. And these are also things mostly for retail stores to buy, but they're more along the line of authentic pieces. They're getting a little bit into that area. They're doing copies of Rose Medallion and Rose Mandarin. We'll look at a few of them, but they make a lot of mistakes on them. But they dirty them up and they stain them in many cases to make them look old. They do certain things to give them an antique look. And that was sort of when they first started selling them, they were selling them as antique Chinese porcelain, antique, with a D on the end, antique. They unfortunately they fooled a lot of people who bought them thinking they were old and that they were just discolored from age. That's not what it is. They were made that way. And we're going to look at the foot rims and the designs on some of those. And then you have the fakes, the straight up copies. These are the most dangerous. These are the ones that are made by highly skilled ceramic artists who know what they're doing. They know what the piece should look like. They know what the colors should look like. They know what the decoration should look like. They know about the heaping and piling effect for those of you that have been collecting. Somebody said to me, well, it's got heaping and piling on it. It can't be fake. Yeah, it absolutely could be fake. The Chinese figured out how to do heaping and piling 100 years ago on copies, all right? They absolutely know how to do it. And they absolutely know how to do the foot rims if they really, really want to. But somewhere on the piece, they always miss. They always screw it up. And always keep in mind that if you're looking at a piece that you know, if it's authentic, it's worth, $400,000 in a New York auction or a Hong Kong auction or a London auction or a Paris auction. If it's turning up in Dubuque, among a pile of other what would be amazingly rare pieces, move on to another auction. Don't even look at them. Don't. You'll talk yourself into it. All right. And these pieces are all sort of a global problem. It's part of hundreds of millions of dollars a year in fraud that goes on in the market, and it's a very, very significant problem. But what I want to do now is I want to hop over and I'm going to show you the bottoms of some of the pieces that are in category 1. Category 3 rather, not category 1. And these are the pieces that are contemporary. They're not going to fool anybody who's been collecting for more than 3 or 4 years, but they do get bought by people who are just learning how to what pieces are and so forth. And they often get misled, and it's very difficult. So we're going to start with I'm going to back this over here. These are some of the pieces we're going to look at quickly. And these are blatantly modern pieces. Blatantly modern. They're not going to fool anybody. Okay, this is actually a lot right now that's on Live Auctioneers. And it's not being sold as anything great or rare. It's just Chinese ceramic lot assorted. Every piece in here is brand new. All of them were made probably since the 1980s. The ones on the ends, some of you will recognize the double happiness mark. Which is often used for marital fidelity. And then you have this sort of tureen under here, and then you have this ewer. It's a teapot. And all of these are new. All of these are brand new. There's no antique here. But on the Identification Assistance Service I often get pieces that I had one that looked just like this the other day, as a matter of fact, and she was wondering if it was old. And this is what the bottom of it looks like. And this is not what the bottom of an antique should ever look like. One, it says it's got made in China stamped in small print to the bottom of it, country of origin requirement for export items. And then you notice this very wide, sort of slightly rounded, absolutely white foot that's fairly shallow. Whenever you see a foot that looks like this, you know right away that you're looking at a reproduction. You're absolutely looking at a copy. That's all there is to it. All right, and the same thing goes for this. This is that oval bowl. And you'll notice on here it even says the Bombay Company. And Bombay Company, of course, is a big retail chain, catalog company. And excuse my dog in the background; he's a little excited. It says "Made in China" on it. Okay, and that's that again, and that is that wide, flat foot that you never want to see. There it is. You can see it here, and notice how it tips in slightly to the bottom. That's something you see more often on 20th century pieces from the Republic period and contemporaneously on these pieces. You'll also notice that this piece is very thick. If you go back here, you notice the thickness of this. It's got a feeling of thickness, and then you have this sort of odd overhanging ledge on the inside, the lip that sort of comes over. But these sort of heavy, very smooth, heavily glazed pieces, you won't find Chinese antiques that ever look like that in the glaze. And the decoration is just blue and white. And here you have the teapot with the enthymemons going around it. These are probably transfer decorated from what I can see. They appear to be. And then they color it in. They put the silver on it and so forth. And this was part of a demitasse set. And also made for the Bombay Company. And then you have that very, very white foot again, that perfectly placed vent hole and so forth. All right. And those are all very modern, all very easy to spot once you've been collecting for a little while. And then there's this one. This is I'm sorry about the darkness of this, but this is the photograph that came online with it. And this is a very blatant copy of a rose mandarin plate that would have been made. The originals would have been made back in the 1830s to the 1870s, somewhere in there. And there's a few things that you notice on the front that are wrong right off the back. I haven't even gotten to the back of it yet. The back will instantly tell you that it's fake. You'll notice that the hair on the ladies is very, very black, and there's no gilding. And you'll also notice that the facial expressions are all very similar. They look like clone ghosts of one another. Even in the eyes, and here and here and here. The drawing is not individualized. Very often on Rose Mandarin and Rose Medallion, even those were export pieces. When the Chinese painted faces, they gave people different expressions. There was a sense of individuality given to them, even on the big export services that they exported thousands and thousands of them. They every once in a while still well, not every once in a while. They generally always tried to put some sort of expression on their faces. And the next thing that gives it away too is the deadness of the colors. The colors are very muted. If this was lighter in color, you could see what I mean. Many of you will be able to tell anyway. There's certain dead grayness to the enamels, to the colors. They're not brilliant and sparkling and pretty. They're sort of dead and flat. And they do this on purpose to make them look old. They look like, oh, the colors are old because they faded. They're old. Porcelain colors, enamel colors on porcelain never fade. They can get damaged, but they can't fade. And the other thing that's wrong with it is these little tiny cartouches. The cartouches are much too small. They shouldn't have, that was a mistake. And I'm sure they've corrected it since, because this plate was probably made in the 1980s. But if you saw this plate in an antique shop or at an auction and you picked it up and you flipped it over, right off the bat, you know it's a fake because of that. They never put rain marks on the bottom of Chinese export porcelains, especially Rose Medallion and Rose Mandarin and Rose Canton. They didn't do it because these pieces weren't meant for the Chinese domestic market. If you go to China and look around, you're not going to find anywhere near the amounts of Rose Medallion and Rose Mandarin you can find in the West. You find an occasional piece here and there, but only because it got there accidentally or some oddball situation ended up with it being there. It's not a product that they made to consume in their own country. Those were all made to be shipped out for foreign silver, basically. And this double foot arrangement, this double ring on the bottom, is not something you should expect to see either. So you have this double ring, a rain mark, and this very, very flat, untrimmed foot with all this discoloration and staining on it. Tell you right away that this is a copy. So front or back, you shouldn't have any confusion. That looks like, after a while you'll be able to tell from 30 feet away that this is a copy, and you flip it over from 100 feet away, you'll know that's a copy. And the same goes for this one. This is a copy of an 18th century export plate. These aren't good copies. These are very low quality copies, but they end up in auctions, and people occasionally pay serious money, several hundreds of dollars for this. This plate and the previous plate were probably worth about $20 at the most, as merely wall decoration or shelf decorations. And this is a very bad copy of an 18th century dish. And if you pull it in and look at it, again, you have the same sort of the faces, the way the eyes are drawn, single stroke black line dot, single stroke black line dot, single stroke here paint dot. the eyebrows, everything is the same. Like I said, they all look like clones. They shouldn't. They should all have individualized appearances. And then you have colors that didn't exist on 18th century porcelain. In particular, this orangey yellow. It's too orange. The colors are wrong. And that you'll learn from experience. And then when you flip it over on the back, you'll notice the one. It looks like somebody smeared some gunk on here. I'm not sure what that's in the glaze or not. But the foot rim is totally wrong. It's not as bad as some I've seen, but it's totally wrong. There's no iron oxide line to the inside of the foot, which is an orange spot that appears. It's not trimmed quite right, and the clay isn't the right color. But this is the back of a reproduction, and also the glaze. It's awfully glossy, and you have to handle these, but pay attention to that foot rim, and notice here how the foot rim slopes in, these inward sloping feet. During the Republic period and right up until today, when they made foot rims, prior to the Qing dynasty and the Ming dynasty, when they did foot rims, generally they went straight down, like walls, to support the plate. In the Republic period, they began this process of sort of sloping foot rims in. So if you have a vase with a Qidlung mark and it's got a sloping in foot rim, generally speaking, it's a Republic copy, or it's a brand new copy, because they still do them that way today. And the same thing goes with this one. Here you have a rose mandarin, a rose medallion dish that again has these very dead-looking faces on them. No gilding in the hair. That's the other thing that's missing always. They don't bother doing little tiny delicate hand gilding areas. They even use hand gilding on the hair of very common rose mandarin and rose medallion pieces. Here you don't see any of it. And you'll notice there's sort of a muted tone to it, and there's some staining over in here, and there's some areas of sort of umber. This should be more of an orange tone down here, and you've got some gunk and grime in here, because they will smear the plate with sort of stains that don't wash off. If you have a yellowish stain on a piece of porcelain and you try to wash it off and it doesn't wash off and it's clearly on the surface, that was put there intentionally to make it look old. And the Chinese fakers, especially in the 80s and 90s, did that a lot. They applied this yellow umber colored smear in certain places. You should never see it on any piece for any reason. All right, they didn't do it in the old days. And then you have, again, the dead colors. The colors are dead on here. And when I do the one on authentic 18th century and 19th century Famille rose porcelains, I'll try to bring these in and show you the color difference side by side. And on the back of it, you see again this smeared area, unglazed bottom. They didn't do rose medallion chargers and so forth with unglazed bottoms. Sometimes the platters, big oblong or rectangular platters, especially in the 18th century, they would do these blue and white wares with slightly concave unglazed bottoms, but they had kiln grit on them, and they didn't look like this. This looks like it was in a fire. And the reason is that they stained it with an ash sort of stain. And if you pull in the picture and you look at these carefully, you can always see where they smeared it on. You can see the smearing lines. There's one there, there's one there, there's one there, there's one there, running around the piece. The foot rim on this is fairly close to what it should look like, but as you get to see more and more of them, it doesn't have the right color to it. It's not the right sort of ivory. It's not badly trimmed, but the bottom and the foot rim fall apart on examination as far as the cleanness of the finish. It looks like it's been banged, and this is damage they do to the feet to make them look old again. And you'll notice here where they rubbed away, they burnished off some of the glaze or did something here so that it discolors, so it looks like it's really, really old. Looks like old ware is what they're trying to copy. And you should never see this with all these little bumps and whatnot on here. And again, you have these very dead looking enamels. And then hopping along over to this, the little double gourd vase with the lid. I know a lot of you know right away this is a reproduction. You see these in Pier 1 Pier 1 imports, and department stores sell them in the gifts departments, usually for $20 or $30. They often have a little foil sticker on the bottom that says "Made in China." But this is a brand new piece, And when you flip it over and look at the back of it, this is what it looks like. And you just think sensibly. It has a chin lung mark on here that's not particularly well done, but the foot rim is just so smooth and so clean and so white and so perfect. There's no impurities in the glaze. There's no iron oxide line showing up on the edge where the glaze and the unglazed porcelain meet, and there's no texture to it. There's no nothing. It's just a modern thing. So you want to keep that in mind always, always. And then you have things like this that they started making, copies of Wuxuangpu vases. Of course, many of you collect them or know about them at least. And the Wuxuangpu are the 40 heroes of Chinese culture. And they began producing them in the early 19th century and putting in images of famous Chinese figures from going back to the Han Dynasty, and then writing in their names above them like this. And you'll see them sometimes. You'll see saucers and dishes and bowls. Well, they started selling for pretty good money. So the Chinese forgers, of course, began making reproductions of these right away. And these are not good reproductions. These are fairly low-quality reproductions. But these are right now online on live auctioneers, and they will probably sell okay. Unfortunately, to somebody who thinks they're buying Wuxuangpu originals. And a vase like this, of course, if it's actually from the period and is 15 inches tall and is made during the mid-19th century, I believe this is actually one of a pair, as I recall. They're worth $3,000 to $4,000 a piece, minimum. And here you have it. And when you flip it over and look at the bottom of this, that's not what it should look like. Now, the construction is correct. I should point that out. There's nothing wrong with this boxed base that's elevated and hollow inside. They did do those in the 19th century. It was a way of constructing the bottoms of hexagonal bases. They used slabs of clay and built it up. But the texture of the clay, this absolutely white area, it shouldn't be stained and it shouldn't be snow white either. And it's very thin. You'll notice the thinness. On the original pieces, that's a fairly thick piece. It's about, it can be up to 1/4 of an inch in thickness or 1/8 of an inch. It can be thicker than this. This is very, very thin. And you have these little bubbles popping through, which you generally don't see on old pieces either, and so forth. And then you have some staining that's been added down in here to make it look old, all right? But when you look at the areas where the staining isn't, this is clearly staining along in here. You have this extremely white porcelain with no impurities, all right? And they do that today because they're able to make very, very pure porcelains. And then you have this. This is this vase. These vases have been around since the 1970s and 80s. It's a rose medallion vase, a rose mandarin vase. Again, ladies with no gilding in the hair and these sort of zombie-looking faces on them with very dull enamels. The colors here are not bright famille rose enamels. They're very dead and flat-looking. There's no brush strokes in the ground here. Usually when they did these, they would brush in the orange in layers and so forth. This looks like it was done on a drafting table. And then when you flip the piece over to here, you really get the full picture. This is the bottom of it. And of course, anybody that's been collecting for a while, one thing you notice is a Made in China gold foil sticker on here. It's very dirty and stained looking. There's a 2 and there's a chin lung mark. Okay, they never put, as I said before, they never put chin lung marks on rose medallion or rose mandarin or any of the export wares. And they never put rain marks like this from China off to the side. They did them off to the side in Japan on Japanese ceramics all the time. But in China, the rain mark goes in the middle, and it goes in alignment with the view side of the object. So if you have a Chinese vase and you look at the bottom of it and you're reading the mark, if you turn the vase up, the primary side of the vase should be facing you at that point. You shouldn't be looking at the side where the handles are or looking at it, on an angle or anything. And the same thing goes with plates and bowls. They should, when you have them, you look at the bottom and then you flip it, it should align perfectly. Now, on the great copies, the modern copies today, they know that and they are aligning them perfectly. So it's not something that's going to save your skin every time, but if you see a mark and it's blatantly out of line, you can put it down and move on. And again, you see this very, very wide foot that's been stained. This would look like the white feet we saw in the other vase, but they've smeared some gunk on here to make it look old. Looks like maybe they put a little, sometimes they take shavings of metal shaving, iron shavings, and they'll sprinkle them on so that they oxidize in the kiln and produce that rust effect. And that appears to be what that is right there, because I don't see it anywhere else on here, just that one spot, but it gives it a look. And then you have this weird little dimple in the bottom, like a punty that you see in glass. They didn't. That shouldn't be there either. And that's left from probably from some sort of mold they used. All right, and so that's a low grade modern fake, as is this. And these are extremely common. This is a Sung type, but I'm just showing it because it was such a crazy example. It's got this unbelievably shiny glaze to it, and this nice guan crackle and all that. This is a brand new piece, and these are everywhere. And I'm showing you this because I want to show you the bottom. If you see vases out there in guanware or crackleware that have any sort of mark like this in the middle, sometimes it looks like a horseshoe, and I forget what they call it. There's some silly name they've given it. But if you see this with this in relief, and then you see this brown foot, you know instantly it's a fake. Now, there are better fakes, but this is a low-grade fake, but they have sold hundreds of thousands of them. All right, and then you have this one. This is the bottom of it. Clearly not what it should look like, and I'll explain why in a second. But here's the front of it. And again, you have these ghostly looking women with no gilding in the hair, and these are sort of Mandarin figures. You notice the lightness of the pink. It's all washed out. The yellow is all washed out. You don't see a lot of layering going on, a lot of delicate coloring going on. Here's a close-up of it. And if you've been collecting for any length of time, you know right away this is a fake. All they did was do a quick, possibly even a stencil outline, and they dab a pink, dab a yellow, dab a blue, done. They're not filling it in. They're not painting the piece, really. They're just sort of coloring it. It's like a color by numbers thing. And the bottom of it, obviously, is not what it should look like. You have these rather odd factory triangular black stamps on the bottom. Sometimes these are removed. Sometimes people buy these, and they remove these stamps. They will come off on occasion with acetone. We'll dissolve them sometimes if they're not well fixed. So you want to be careful of that. But again, you have this very white rounded foot where they've put some black ink on here and sort of smeared it up, and then this convex white glazed bottom with no impurities, just pure white, and left with these sloping, again, the foot tilting, sloping, ramping inward toward the bottom is not what it should look like, and you have this very rounded edge with no appearance of any age to it. So this vase, you know, was made sometime during the last 20 or 30 years. It could have been made last year, could have been made 20 years ago. They don't change them all that much. And here's another example. Now, this is a piece that was probably made, it was made loosely based on an English form and loosely based on a Chinese form. And this was made to go in a department store. But I've had people send them in to me wondering if it's old or not. And it's fair enough. It's got, underglazed blue. It's got birds, got Chinese characters on the bridges, the willow trees and all that. And they will look things up and find willow trees. And here's the bottom of it. All right. Again, you have a seal stamp with a Qin-lung, 4-character Qin-lung mark, off center, with this very greenish blue glaze under here, and this very, very pure white foot. You see a little bit of rubbing on here from it being on tabletops over the years, but this is not whatever any of these should ever look like. It's just the wrong bottom. But that's a modern foot. That's the bottom of factory-made feet. All right. And then you have this one. Again, this is a new piece. This is online right now. I don't know whether it's on eBay or Live Auctioneers, but there's a lot wrong with it. The tone of the yellow is wrong. You have Xiao Lu over here with his staff holding up a peach, and that's a typical depiction. That's nothing wrong with the depiction, but the colors and the art is terrible. And you have this Famille Rose business again outlined, and they're just a swoosh of yellow, a swoosh of blue, swoosh of pink, and they're done. And they did it all the way down. You don't typically see this nice layering that you see that we talk about all the time of red and on a red and a red, and it builds it up so that it glows a bit. You get some depth out of it. These are all very flat looking pieces. And the bottom of it has this sort of tooth effect that you do see on these, but not generally in that color. This color here, this sort of aqua green, whatever that is, that's not a color you're going to find on old porcelain. And then the deer looks like a cartoon. He's too stiff, undeveloped, and so forth. But then when you flip the piece over, You see this. This is again. You have a Famille Rose vase that looks like it might have been made. It's of a style and type that was done during sort of the early to mid 19th century. It's not. It's brand new. But then they when they did it, they went too far and they put a Kangxi mark on there, which is of course is ridiculous. Now the calligraphy for the Kangxi mark is fairly well done. I have to give them that. It's not quite right, but it's they sort of got it. But the foot rim. It looks like it's got like plaster on it. There's a certain whiteness to it, and they've sort of smeared gray lines onto it and so forth, and it's very round and fat and thick. It's not looking right. And if you look over here very carefully, you'll see there's a chip out of it. There's a chip. Look for areas like this. And what do you see? Nothing. You just see pure whiteness. You shouldn't, on old pieces, you generally, that's not what they look like. You look and you'll see little flecks of imperfection and so forth. But the main thing is the rounded snow white foot, the improper use of a Kangxi mark, and this style of vase, this shape of vase, is not one you're going to find in the Kangxi period. So you know right away, if you study shapes and forms, Kangxi mark. Okay, a piece can only be as old as its most recent element. So you got a Kangxi mark. Okay, so it was made in around 1700 or so. You got an early 19th century shape. Was it made around the Jiajing or the Daoguan period? And then you pull it in and you look at the way the faces are drawn and the way the people are done and the quality of these enamels, and you go, no, those aren't the enamels they would have used at all. The colors are wrong. There's no glow to the color. The pieces, the aspects are just washed in with single brush strokes just to color it in here, like coloring with numbers and so forth. And this is a fake. And I don't know how the guy is selling this. If he's selling it as a late Qing, I think it's advertised as late Qing or something. I'm not sure, but it's a fake. All right, and then you have this. Now this is very reminiscent of the two we just saw at the beginning from the Bombay Company. This is another one that turned up. So they sold a lot of them in this pattern with this sort of quickly drawn brush stroke. These are what they call boneless decoration. There's no outline. In other words, when they don't outline a decoration and then color it in, they just do it with the sweep of a couple of brush strokes to do the whole decoration of the whole element. That's called boneless decoration. No frame to it. And this is what the bottom of it looks like. Now this one has again sort of a late Qing looking bottom, but it has this odd dent in the bottom, this sort of punty again. And the foot rim, when you look at it carefully, has slightly tan oatmeal color, but it's too rounded, not finished properly. And this clearly is contemporary work. Okay, that's all there is to it. And I'm not convinced this was even painted on to be very plain. I'd have to see it in person. It could have been done with a screen printing, a screen sprayer onto these pieces. But there's the bottom of it. He's pointing out a crack on the bottom, a firing flaw. Pieces that are made today do get firing flaws in them. So if you see a firing flaw, and it doesn't mean it's old, it just means the temperature was off in the kiln a little bit. Something went wrong during the cooling process, and it created that crack. All right, and then the last thing is this. Now this is an octagonal vase. They did them in China during the 18th and 19th century, but they didn't do them in green. They did them in blue and white, or with enamels of Femme Vert, Wutsai, or Famille Rose. And here you have one with underglaze, sort of grayish green enamels, very sloppily painted. This is a decoration. These are not meant to fool anyone. And it was decorated apparently in Vietnam. And again, you have this, again, very, very white foot. It may have been a blank that was made in China and sent to Vietnam for decoration. I don't know. If you really want to know, you can look up Su Ming Tan, which apparently is a little company in Vietnam, and they make these. That's all right. And but the foot, very, very pure, very shallow, not the way a foot should look on a 19th century piece of Chinese porcelain. All right. And now we're going to take a look at some more troubling pieces. Okay, and now on to the better copies. This is a bowl that that's for sale right now on the web. It's Famille Rose decorated. Not horrible looking. It's brand new. And there's a picture of the bottom of it. Here's what the foot rim on it looks like. It's sort of bull-nosed and rounded. You'll notice that the mark is a little bit compressed together too tightly. They did do them occasionally that way, but not often. And you'll notice that the enamels on the back of it are very flat, are very opaque. They're not layered. There's not a lot of layering here. It's just red, and it's not the right color. It's not rosy. But when you look at the foot rim on this, you have to look at them carefully. You can't just glance at them and say, well, it looks like every other foot rim. No, it doesn't. It looks very different. The first thing is you'll notice that the evenness of the color all the way around. There's absolutely no impurities. And it's not that white. It's not as white as it should be. And you don't have any iron oxide showing up or any tanning or the little red bloom from the kiln. It doesn't have any of that. The rain mark is nicely done, but not a lot of touch marks on here. All the colors are fairly the same tone. You don't see where you can see here they stroked down and picked up there. But some of these places, it's very hard to tell what the stroke, it's known as the stroke order, is for the application of the mark. Because the kind of brushes, the kind of stamping tools they use and the brushes they use are like magic, almost like magic markers. They don't run out of paint sometimes. It's a different type of system. At any rate, this should not look like this. This foot, that white edge with no wear, no nothing, these sort of deadish looking enamels, and it's tough to tell the difference. I'm going to grant you that. But this is the kind of thing that you want to be careful of. Qinlong mark famille rose bowls do not turn up in typical auctions, in podunk auctions. All right, and this is I think this is the Mei Ping vase. Yeah, this is a Mei Ping vase that somebody put up here. And they actually made a video for it, which I'm absolutely amazed at. And this is, again, you have these sort of dead faces. They all look like they're all related to each other somehow. These are not what they should look like at all. All right, it's not what they should look like at all. And it's that very thick, creamy white glaze is not correct either. This is a modern piece. And then you have this. This is a modern piece trying to be Kangxi. And it's sort of a low-grade fake, but unfortunately, somebody has paid a lot of money for one of these before, so I'm showing it. Somehow it fooled everybody. The decoration on here is an abomination. The colors are wrong. It's a rouleau vase, but none of the colors are old colors. These are all brand new factory colors. But when you look at the bottom of it, again, you see the Kangxi mark. You see this smearing and coloring on here. This alone should have sent the person running. And again, you have that sloping foot, the sloping inward foot with a red Kangxi mark on a vase that's enameled like this. They were never done. They were never done. It's sort of an abomination. I probably should have had this over with the bad fakes, because this isn't even a good fake. Somehow it ended up here. But it illustrates this sloping effect on the foot and this red Kangxi mark. Now the red Kangxi mark was used on very rare occasions on imperial pieces. This is no imperial piece. The colors are horrendous. All right, and then this is a fake also. And some of you have seen ones. There was one like this that was on eBay for a while. This is not the same vase. This is another of this production. They've been making these now for a while. This is a fake. And it is the colors aren't right on it. And if you flip it over and look at the bottom of it, this one has a Jing mark. Sometimes they put them out with Qinlong marks on them, but this is a reproduction. And this is not a Republic reproduction. This is a brand new reproduction. And this is to give you some idea how good some of them are. You have that foot that slopes in still slightly, and you have all this sort of rubbing, and you see these little parallel lines on here from the trimming tools and whatnot. And then they sort of dirtied the foot up a little to make it look old. But the color of the paste, especially over in here, this color right here, has sort of almost not vanilla color, but a light tan tone to it. That's not what it should look like. And there should be some sort of iron oxide line in there and so forth. Now this green bottom they did use. They used it in the Qinlong period. They used it right through the 19th century as an interior color and a color under the base. But the color on this is a bit off. This is not a Jing vase. This is a contemporary one. And if you pull in up here and you look at some of the enamels, you'll notice again not a lot of shading going on. The colors are there. They're pink, but the shading is poor. The shading is very, very poor. And this would have been meant as an imperial vase. And this is not imperial workmanship. You have this gray area, and again, where they just quickly go swoosh, swoosh with some blue, and then sort of fill in, paint by numbers, fill in there, and move along. All right, and that's the deal with this. All right, there's a lot of these have been sold. A lot of them have sold in Europe for $5, $10, $15, $20,000. These are reproductions, and the enameling on it's pretty good looking. You have to admit they did a pretty good job with it, but it's a fake. All right, this one looks diseased. All right, this foot actually looks like it's a little bit diseased. I hope we'll get to the vase that goes with it. I think it's out of order a little bit, but you'll see these bottoms. This is one where they made the vase, they made the jar, and then they tried to make it look old. They tried to age it, and they went overboard. And you can see all these little black dots where they put gunk on the foot and mixed in impurities to help it appear old after the firing. And they put the artisanal leaf on the bottom, because they did use in Kangxi period and so forth. But you never, ever, ever want to see the bottom of a Kangxi vase that looks like this. But you will see them often on 20th century reproductions. Now let's see if we can find that. No, there's the blue. There's the jar we were just talking about. There it is. It was out of order. This is not a Kangxi jar. This is the jar that went with that ugly foot we were just looking at. And as you can see, the decoration is fairly good. It's fairly good on it. And this is where people get into trouble, because they'll look at this and they'll say, well, that looks good. The dragon is nicely painted. It is nicely painted. If you haven't looked at a lot of dragons, this one looks pretty good. It's a 4-clawed dragon, which makes it unusual. He's chasing the flaming pearl. It's got this sort of wave band around the top, which is a bit too stiff and angular. And then you have this very opaque cobalt blue that they used as the clouds and the precious objects around the top. But a lot of people will look at this and think, that's probably okay. And that's what the bottom of this jar looks like. That's the base. And that's the base of a fake. All right. Simple as that. And here's another one. This is a reproduction that was done to look like a transitional period jar or early Kangxi period. And it's the squirrel and grapes pattern. The decoration is much too clumsy on it. The squirrels look silly. The lines are too many lines on them. But this is a pattern that became very popular during the transitional and into the early Kangxi period. And they had these sort of dome lids on them and so forth. They call them, sometimes it's they're known as lantern forms, a lantern form vase. And there's the mouth to it. There's the bottom of it. And this Footrim has been stained and dirtied up to look old. That's all they've done with it. That's all they've done to it. They have certain things they can apply to the feet and make them look old. But you'll notice it's very, very flat. It has no wear on the foot. No wear to the foot. There's no area where it's polished smooth from use. And the reason is it's not old. It's maybe 10 or 15 or 20 years old at the most. Maybe 5 years old. But that's what the bottom of these fakes look like. They look muddied up and dirty. All right. And here you have one with a Kangxi. This is one of these coral ground bowls with a Kangxi mark on it. The enameling on it is not particularly good. It's pretty. The colors are pretty, but the handwork, the delicacy of the handwork, just isn't there. When you look at this area and here, the shading is very, very weak from this reddish center outward. You don't see any, again, no layering. Here you have just a quick green wash coming out. You want to think about how the artist applied his colors. And then when you flip the thing over, you have this very, very white bottom with a rather poorly done Kangxi mark in the center stamped in. And then again, you have this, you can see it up in here, that slightly sloping in wall and this very, very white foot, this nearly flawless clay foot. But it's almost Kangxi porcelain has a very dense texture to it. This has sort of a looser tan color. It doesn't look hard. There's a certain hardness to Kangxi clay that you'll figure out after you've handled a bunch of it. But in the meantime, this were it authentic would be an incredible rarity and be worth $1 million, $2 million, $200, something like that. Coral red Kangxi bowls, because these were meant for the palace, and made for the emperor and so forth. And this is a blatant copy. You will not come across one of these outside of a major auction house or museum or major private collection anywhere in the world at this point. They only made a few of them. A handful of them are known, and that's it. It's sort of like Ruware. There aren't many of them around. All right. But there's the bowl, and it's in an auction right now with, I think, a $1,500 estimate. If it were authentic, of course, it would be, you could add 3 zeros to that estimate. All right, and then you have this, the lime basin. Now, this is very well done. This is these lime green basins that were done during the Qinlong and Jing period, and even maybe during the Daoguan. This one is fairly well done. It's got a collection sticker on the bottom, and it's fairly convincing looking, but it's not. It's a copy. And if you pull it in and look at it very, very carefully, maybe the next picture. I saved several pictures of this because it was so well done. Here's the bottom of it. The foot rim has just a hint of wear to it, like maybe they slid it for 1 minute across the tabletop to make it look old. I don't think it's a Republic one either, but you'll notice the deadness of this color here. All right, some of the colors aren't bad. The pink's not too bad. This is not good over here, but this color here, this flower, it should be yellow. It should be beautiful, and it's not. It looks like a dying plant, and the outlining and the flow is not as smooth as it should be around this piece. And there's some errors. If you look sometimes, you'll look at the black lines, you'll notice where the artist went off a little bit, and it shouldn't have any of that. All right. But do look at this piece and understand that this is a total copy. This is a reproduction, and it's in an auction with a fairly big estimate on it. It's not old. It's not old. And the lime green color is not lime enough. In a number of places, I don't like the way the bat is drawn. It's too skimpy. There's not enough detail in it. There's not enough detail in a lot of this. So you want to see lots of detail, and then the back of it, at this point, if this were from the late 18th, early 19th century, would have a lot of wear on this base right here, and you don't see it. You see just incidental wear, which it wouldn't have. This would be worn almost through at this point. These pieces tend to be very, very worn down once they get to be a couple hundred years old, just from use, from weight being in them and put on tabletops. And they did do flat bottom, slightly concave pieces, but the foot will not look like this. And then this, the Mei Ping base with the dragon on it. This has got a Qinlong mark. And again, you have this sort of light clay color with all these ridges and lines in it. When they clean foot rims, they go around them with a knife, and they clean the foot off. They may use a combing device, a small device to tidy it up, but then they go back around it and smooth it off, especially on imperial pieces. And there's this here, you can see this fairly extensive ridge. And had this been made at the imperial factory, they would have been immediately rejected because of the finish on the bottom, the way it's done. It's very sloppy, very poor work. And the mark, again, is completely uniform color, which is not something you generally see. And then when you pull the dragon in, again, what do you have? You don't have any detailed layering in the enamels. You have a quick outline and just a whoosh of color, a whoosh of color, a whoosh of color. Same thing on the lotus over here. It's outlined, and they just sort of smear in some color. There's no painting going on here. It's just they're filling in, and that's one of the problems with many of these copies. Sometimes they do them better, but in this case they didn't. And this is in an auction as an antique. All right, and there's the foot rim on it. It's not what it should look like. The foot on this does not slope in particularly, the foot rim, but it does slope in a bit. But the texture of the foot, and it has sort of an ash. If you look here, sometimes you see it almost looks like ash on them. This has a slightly ashy appearance to it. And then you have this. This is a copy of a 18th century monochrome, and there's the bottom of it. Again, it's got this sort of muddy ash finish on the foot, and this very peculiarly done and badly done signature on the bottom. Anytime you see a vase that has a foot like that and a bottom like that, it's a fake. It's just a fake. All right. And then you have this, the dragon vase. This is a Hangshan seller on eBay. He's located in mainland China. As all of you know, none of this stuff is legally exported out of mainland China. So if you're looking at pieces from a seller in mainland China, that has an imperial mark on it, or from Hong Kong or anything like that, you don't even consider it. It's an automatic fake. Because it's a prison sentence if they got caught sending these out of the country. And this is a copy of, again, another Qianlong piece. Notice how bright blue, it looks like the inside of an old Boston whaler. And then you have this very, very white foot. Again, no impurities, no nothing, no iron oxide line, and so forth. And then you have the decoration, which is, if you pull it in, not a lot of shading going on. It's not terrible. This is actually, some of this work is actually better than most, and it's got some sgraffito decoration, the scrolling on the ground on it. But when you look at areas like this, it's just colored in. It's just colored in. And the dragon scales are too fresh, and there's absolutely no wear any place on this. And after 200 years, you do get areas of wear. You have little areas where the gilding is worn down a little. Now, sometimes they do that intentionally to rub it. They buff it down a little bit. But this one is not one of them. And this, were it authentic, it would be, a 7-figure piece of porcelain. It would be worth, well, somewhere between 600,000 and 1.2 million. I'd have to go do some checking to get a more accurate number, but somewhere around there. You can buy it on eBay right now for next to nothing, a few $100. And here you have, again, a better shot of the colors. Here you have the colors here. The enamels, the rose enamels are a little too red. And then you have this black dragon, which is very unusual, with extensive gilding of scales onto it, and there's not a speck of wear. Just the freshness of it. This looks so fresh and new, and even when you pull it in, you look into these little areas here. There's no wear any on this. It's just got a yellow wash over it, and then lots of enameling. Very dangerous. Same thing goes for this. This one, the colors are completely, the color key, the tone of color on this are completely wrong. This should be a rich raspberry color. For example, this should be a bright turquoise, and it's not. It has sort of almost like not quite dried blood, but not far from it. A very elaborate type of vase that's reticulated. This is one of these revolving vases, and there's the bottom of it. And this has been intentionally burned, trying to make it look old with the Qianlong mark. The foot rim is completely wrong. You look at these, and people get so preoccupied looking at the indications of age, this burnt area, they don't notice this. The foot rim is much to the wrong color, and the wrong shape. And you have this big flat area that doesn't make a lot of sense, in the way the blackness goes over it. And this is all done to age it. This is all aging. Same thing how they aged the mark. You'll notice they stained it up in here, and it's lighter over here. They put some stain on it to make it look old. So some newer collector comes along and says, "Oh, look at that's got a lot of wear to it. Look how dirty it is underneath." Doesn't mean a thing. They can put dirt anywhere. And then you have this orangey yellow charger with, again, like I said, Qianlong is a favorite mark of the forger. This is another example of a fake. It's very carefully done, but the color wrong. They got the color completely wrong on it, and the decoration isn't particularly good. There's even sort of a muddy texture to it down in here where you see the enamels didn't quite set in. You're not going to find one of these in an auction outside of a major auction house here or in Europe. You're just not. And if you look at that foot, you'll notice it does tip in slightly. It's completely flat and has no imperfections in it. It looks like they rubbed something on here. But if you see something over here on a plate, an area like that, look over here. Do you see a lot more of it? No, you don't. You see this grayish area from maybe having something rubbed on it or sitting on a piece of stone or something. But other than that, you don't see it. And you have this orange peel effect. Often you can spot orange peel where it doesn't belong by light reflection. And here you have it, and these pieces typically didn't have orange peel on them. They were very smooth and very well done. All right, and then over to this. This, of course, is the granddaddy of all the fakes. They are making so many copies of this vase in China. They turn up everywhere because they're very hard to figure out. They're notoriously hard to figure out. And lately, they've been turning out a lot of them saying, oh, they're Republic or late Qing. No, this vase is brand new. This vase has absolutely no age to it. And there you have your heaping and piling effect. All these little dark areas. It's very nicely done. You cannot knock the workmanship. The workmanship here is quite excellent. It's just the wrong color. And there's the bottom of it with the export wax seals on it. and a chin lung mark on the bottom, and you have this sort of dried chalk looking foot to it. And you'll notice over in here there are some wear lines that don't make sense. If you look at the bottoms of a vase and you see scrapes going outward here, all right, like up in this area here, all right, in here, all right, this foot is rounded. And if it's rounded, it means the contact point is in one place only. It's on the lowest point of the foot. So how do you get staining on the inside of the foot on the wall that never touches anything? And here you have it all along here. There should be no staining on this at all. This foot rim should be relatively clean, and the lowest edge of the foot rim should some rubbing to it. But this was given an export thing. They put the SC Co collection. This was not in the SC Co collection. And there's another sticker down here. Don't believe any stickers you see on any piece unless it's in a museum or at a major auction house. These stickers are being moved around constantly in Spink labels, Marchant labels, Chait labels, all the old labels from that were from major dealers from about 1910 onward up to the beginning of World War II. Those stickers are all being photocopied and reproduced and put on porcelain all over the world, and it's not illegal. All right, you can put any sticker you want on something. Sometimes they've been putting them on the inside of bowls so you're sure to see it. It's ridiculous. They wouldn't have done that. I saw one the other day that had 2 or 3 major gallery labels on the inside of a plain white bowl. They would have all gone underneath. At any rate, and then look at the foot again. You've got this slope to it, and you've got this sort of beveled, chalky edge. But that's the touch edge there. This area that's sort of muddied up should have never come in contact with any surface. So how did it? Well, it came in contact with the surface because they made it come in contact. And then one of the last things I want to show you is this. This is just a really bad underglazed red vase that has been turning. These have been turning up now for a number of years, and people are buying them, which is very disturbing because underglazed red, of course, is one of the most desirable, is the most desirable underglazed color there is. We've talked about them on other videos very often, and there's the foot rim to it. All right, and that again, you have that flat edge, no impurities at all, no nothing. And this is supposedly, they're trying to make it look like a late Yuan, early Ming thing. And that's not at all what the paste looked like. It's much too tight, much too pure, much too clean, and it's trimmed improperly. All right, so you don't want to see that. And you're not going to find an underglazed iron red decorated Yuan vase of any quality, again, outside of institutions, major auction houses, and great private collections, because they've all been wicked up by now. They really have. They do not turn up. And then you have let's see here. This vase. This is one that struck me as being a very good copy. They did a really nice job with this all the way around. The enamels. The puce is a little bit too watery looking. And the decoration, again, do you remember the vase we just looked at that had the gold scales all over it, right? The vase with all the dragon with all the scales. Well, here's that same treatment again, almost identical. It's the way they do them now. They make them almost more refined than they were originally. In many cases, and the vine decoration on here is quite good. There's a little bit of heaping and piling, especially on the lappets around the bottom. And then when you come over here, you see the bottom of it, and you know instantly this is a fake. Here you have the chin lung mark, and here you have this extremely white paste that has a bevel on the outside, a bevel on the inside, absolutely no impurities, with a step coming down from here. And it's too perfect, too new, and too flawless looking. And again, if you come across a vase like this out there, the chances of it being authentic, even if it's perfectly well done, is, I'll just say it, as close to zero as you can get. There's been maybe, in the last few years, maybe, in the last 10 years, there's maybe been 2 vases that have suddenly appeared on, or 3 of this quality that have appeared on the market that were authentic. around the world. I think Pandolfini in Italy found one, and it was known to the family. The family didn't, it wasn't a house call where the dealer came in and said, "Oh, Marty, look what you have." No, the family knew what it was. They just decided they didn't want to sell it, and they're private people. They don't want anybody to know they have it, so that was it. But the chances of just coming across one of these in an auction house in America outside of the major threes or the big five, somebody might consign a piece like this to Christie's. They might consign it to Doyle. They might consign it to Sotheby's. They might consign it to Freeman. They might consign it to Bonhams. But that's it. They're not giving this to Lauren galleries down in Texas. I mean down in Georgia, or any of those the 555 gallery out in California, because all they sell is fakes. This is a very good quality reproduction, and that's what the bottom looks like. And then you have these are other bases to copies. Hold on a second. I want to go back and look at this. These Chuanchu Ping Qinlong style peach decorated vases turn up all the time, and lately I've noticed they're trying to make a sort of shoehorn a lot of them into being known as Republic period. They're not. They're brand new. This piece is brand new. This should be rose color, and it looks more like dried blood or has a muddy tone to it. And if you click over, that's the bottom of it, and obviously not the right foot. And there you have that very, very sloped edge coming in with almost nothing showing. And then you have, again, this blackened business applied to the rim. This is not what any bottom of any antique Chinese vase will ever look like. It will never look like this. So if you see a vase that looks like this, instantly say new, not Republic, new, 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 new. And this is new, new, new. This is the bottom of that vase. And the enamels, the freshness of them, the lack of vitality and the color, all of that confirm what the Footrim just told us. And then this is the bottom of another a Qinlong copy. I wonder if the vase is here. Yeah, there it is. There's two more of those Wang Shu Pu pieces. We'll get to those in a second. This is a copy. Again, you notice at the top, this leaf decoration is very reminiscent of those two blue vases we saw at the very beginning of the video, where they had these leaf form devices. Well, here it is again. And again, poorly enameled, poorly shaded, and there's the foot rim on it. Again, this is not a Republic vase. This is a reproduction, contemporary, that they've sort of scraped up the foot on it, made it look old. They've added some gunk on the inside here to make it look old, but notice the way the foot comes in. And to me, this looks like it's, especially when you look at that, this is a brand new vase where they worked very hard at making the foot look old. But that's not what it should look like. That fat bull-nosed foot with this sharp edge and all this discoloration should not be there, and it would not have a Qinlong mark on it either. So there you go. And then the Wu Shuang Pu vase. I wanted to show this because this is another pair that I came across. There they are again. This one has more writing on it. These are turning up everywhere. I'm just warning you. They are copies. And here they are. It's nicely done. I thought that one was a single, the first one. This is the pair that I'd seen. And there's the mark on the bottom. It's got sort of a Republican-looking Qinlong mark on it, the way they did in the Republican period. But it's not. This is a brand new foot. And you have that totally flat foot running around the outside of it. And it's been discolored chemically or with inks and so forth. They rub inks on and then wipe it off, and rub ink on and wipe it off and let it dry a little, wipe it off to give it some age. But there's no finish to this foot at all. It's got no smoothness, no surface wear, no nothing. This is a brand new vase. And always look for wear. You should see surface wear. You should have what they call soft wear, where little explainable scratches and nicks and so forth from everyday use appear. And then you have this puce decorated famille rose vase. There's the bottom of it with a Yongchen mark. Again, not what it should look like. Also the enamel smeared up onto the inside of the foot. The paste is not white enough. It's got this weird discoloration in here that doesn't make any sense. Kiln grit and so forth. This is not a Republican vase. This is a brand new vase. And there's the decoration. When you pull it in and look at it, I think this is on Live Auctioneers right now. I'm not sure. The pinkness is sort of the wrong tone. The decoration, the small decoration down here, the detail decoration, it does not hold up on examination. From a distance, it all looks pretty good. but from when you zoom in on it, it doesn't. And then you get down in here into the flowers and whatnot, and this looks more like a Hallmark greeting card than Chinese art. The enamels are just quickly applied into an outlined area. They're composed nicely, so they look visually pretty good. But little things jump out at you. The rose color is the wrong color. It's not rosy enough. It's leaning a little bit towards sort of it's got too much brown in it. You have the yellow here, this yellow enamel. It's too yellow. It's too lemony. Shouldn't be lemony. It should lean slightly towards egg yolk yellow. And then you have this other colors down here, the outlining and so forth. It's just too crude. And then you have the very red enamel on the foot, which is not a color that you would find on this kind of a vase ever. So you would just sort of go through it, and eventually the whole thing falls apart, and with a Yongchen mark no less. And of course, they didn't make this type of vase during the Yongchen period either. This is a much later style of vase, late 18th, early 19th, mid 19th century, but not Yongchen period. All right, and then the last thing I want to show you is this. I think this is the last. Oh, that's the last thing. Sorry to go on so long, but this is sort of fun, isn't it? This cobalt blue decorated plate with the Yongchen mark on the back. The first thing you want to notice on the front, if it has a Yongchen mark on the back, why does it have all this orange peel? This is considered imperfections. Why is the orange peel so heavy in the glaze? Because it's new, that's why. And then you flip it over and you see the foot rim here, and you have this scratch, again, that black sort of scratching tabletop line, and sort of a V-shaped foot, but not quite right. And then you have all this pitting in the enamels, all of this. That should not be on a Yongchen cobalt decorated plate. It's too many. It's considered to be flawed, and this would have not been. This surface wouldn't have been acceptable for any reason. And then you have this foot, which has just a hint of discoloration added to it to make it look old. All right. And again, I'm going to say it. If you come across a Yongchen marked plate in the market that isn't at a major auction house, you're looking at a copy, most likely. And then you have these Semprus Dowager Shixi style beakers. There are lots of these floating around. The vast majority of the ones that you're going to encounter out there are either brand new or they were made in the 1920s. There are not many of the old ones out there anymore. They made more of these after the end of the Republic, after the end of the Guangxu period, after the death of Shixi, than they made during her lifetime by a mile. They made many, many more after, because the kilns knew they were sellable. And they sold them to Western collectors in yellows, turquoise, purples, all kinds of different colors. But when you examine them closely, you'll notice that the decoration doesn't hold up, or the colors are too strong. There's always something wrong with them. In this case, I don't like the way the leaves are outlined. I don't like the white area around here. I do not like that foot rim at all. Again, that's that new paste foot rim that you see, and this is clearly not appropriate. All right, so that's sort of a quick glance at the foot rims on some of the reproductions you're likely to encounter. A couple of things to remember real quickly is that if it has a Qinlong mark on it, or a Yongchen mark, or a Daoguan mark, or a Kangxi mark, or any of those marks, instantly be suspicious. Be triply suspicious if it's a pair. As somebody once said to me, beware of the rare pair, because something happens when people see a pair of bowls. They go, it's a pair. They completely overlook the possibility that two fakes couldn't be put together. And very often they are. It's more rare. Finding a rare pair of imperial bulls is extremely hard to do. It doesn't happen very much. It's one of those things. 100 years ago, yeah, you could find them. But since then, these pairs have been broken up and treated. You've gone into different collections and so forth. Some of them have been broken and whatnot. So anyway, so that's the end of some of the foot rims you don't want to see. And we'll do one on the ones you do. We'll work on that and get that up in a few days. All right. Have a good week. Bye-bye.